Alright, tubes. Next order of business here is our oil feed for the turbo. Obviously, a turbo needs to have a constant supply of oil pressure to it, otherwise the bearings won't last too long. And so you have two options on Miatas, depending on the year you have. Some of them actually have an oil pressure port, and I'd show it to you, but it's up on the lift there, and I got stuff under it right now. I can't lower it down. But some Miatas actually have an oil pressure port on the side of the motor. I will show that later. And mine actually has that. If you don't have that, the other option is to tee off of the oil pressure sender. Pretty tight up in here, but the oil pressure sender is next to the oil filter. So if you look up here, there's the oil filter right there. And so right next to it is the oil pressure sender. You can see it right now. It's got, I actually unplugged the wire from it already. It's that thing right there though. And so what you can do, you can get yourself a T-fitting. I can put the threads, I'll put the threads in the video. It'll pop up on the screen. It's an odd thread. But either way, this here is the thread for the oil pressure sender. So what you do is you just thread this here into the oil pressure where the sender used to go. You put the oil pressure sender here, and then this here is a flare fitting. I'm not sure what size it is, to be honest. I think maybe it's a -3 AN, but I don't really know how flare fittings are sized, so I'm not certain of that. But in any case, that's the other option you have for getting the oil supply. So like I said, my car actually has the high pressure port on the other side of the motor, which is real nice. The only problem is I didn't think it had it. My car is a 95, and I thought that they stopped that in 94. So as you can see, I already have the T-fitting all ready to go. And if I knew of a store where I could get the fitting for the other side, I would do it. But since I don't, I'm just going to go ahead with the T-fitting. Because the oil pressure port on the motor, it's like a metric size. It's like M10 by 1.5, and then you got to get that into a flare fitting, and nobody's going to have that around me. So we're just going to go ahead and put this T in there. Hopefully it won't be too. Obviously the first step is going to be to loosen the oil pressure sender. So like I say, I already unplugged the line, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this because it's going to be so tight in here, but it's a 15/16 wrench. So what I would do to loosen it is I would get a universal on here the first time and loosen it with that. And then once you get it loose, then you can get just a little short straight extension in there and use that. If it's not tight, you might be able to use this right away. But I had to use the breaker bar because it was kind of tight. And rather than breaking something, trying to get up in there real tight, I just went with the breaker bar. But either way, it's 15/16. I've actually already loosened it, so I'm going to try and get it out now. Alright, so as you can see here, I have my T all set up. I put the temperature sender in here, and these two were actually already in here because I bought some of these parts used, so this was all set up and ready to go for me. And so I'm not sure if I'm going to have a problem with this fitting being on here, if I'm going to be able to turn this whole thing, or if that's going to hit. So I might have to take that off, tighten it, and then put that in. We'll see, but either way, I put some thread sealer on the threads there, and I'm going to go ahead and try and tighten this thing in there. Next step here is going to be tapping the oil pan for the turbo oil drain, and so where we want to tap it is right about in this area right here. It's pretty tight here, especially since this car has power steering and AC, so we got all these lines and pumps and brackets in the way. But it is possible to do this without removing any of that stuff. So what I'm going to do here is, I think this line here, this power steering line, actually that's an AC line, but this power steering line up here might be in my way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up the bracket, and I'm going to loosen up the power steering line itself right there, and just try and tilt it up out of the way enough that I can get to this a little bit better with the drill. And I might pop this boot off too to get it out of my way. Alright, so I was able to get the hole drilled. It's a 9/16 inch hole, and I was able to get it relatively straight. It was on a bit of an angle, but that's not really a big deal. The important part is that I tap it straight. And so I'm in the process of doing it now. I'm tapping it with a 3/8 pipe thread, and we're just about done. Probably want to go, I don't know, maybe about another 1/8 inch in on the tap, and then that should be good. And as you can see here, I've got it greased up. There's two different ways to keep the shavings out of the engine. The one way is the way I'm doing it, and what you do is you just grease up the tap and the drill when you're doing it, and try and keep most of the shavings caught in the grease, and then you just drain the oil out and maybe run some mineral spirits through there and then call it good. The other way, which is probably the better way, but not the way I did it, is you actually hook up like a pressure line, maybe about 5 psi, up to your valve cover breather, and have it blowing air out constantly while you're drilling and tapping. And that's probably a better way to do it, but I'm not too concerned here. The grease is catching most of it, and whatever doesn't will fall into the oil, and then we'll rinse it out with mineral spirits. And lots of people have done it that way before. Nobody's ever had a problem, so I'm not worried about it. I'll show you here. This is my drill that I used to drill through the oil pan. And what I've done here is I made this stop out of some pipe. Just cut a piece of 9/6, or that's probably 5/8 pipe, and it slipped over the bit here. So that way, as soon as I broke through, it would stop going through. It wouldn't catch and pull its way through. And the reason that's important is because right on the other side of where we're drilling is the oil pickup. And if you break that, you have to drop the pan. And in order to drop the pan, you either have to pull the motor or drop the whole subframe. So needless to say, that's something we want to avoid.